Forge fans. Welcome to the Forge Audio Network. I'm Anthony Urciuoli. I'm your host. Forge FC with a 2-0 win in preliminary round action of the Canadian Championship against Mont-Royal Outremont at Tim Hortons Field in Hamilton. It was a match that was talked about all week as being tricky. That was kind of the key word that was being thrown around. A club who, by the way, is kind of amazing when you think about it. Let's talk about Outremont for a second. Here's a club who plays in the PLSQ, which is the semi-pro league in Quebec. Their season hasn't even started yet. They haven't played a match this year, a competitive match. This was their first of the year, and it was against a club at a higher level, on the road, a club in Forge who has some matches under their belt. It was a tall order for Outremont, and they were very respectable. I mean, there were moments there when you thought, Forge better kind of tighten things up here, because Outremont's putting themselves in a position now where they could find themselves scoring a goal and extending this match. But Forge played well. Outremont played well. Ultimately, it was the team with just, the higher end skill that came out on top. Shots, we'll go through the recap here. Shot attempts, 11 for Forge. 6 of them hit the target. 4 attempts for Outremont, 2 of them hit the target. Possession, 66%. That's in favor of Forge. The passing, again, this is kind of where the rust from a club that hasn't played much this year, and maybe a lack of skill in comparison to Forge. Pass accuracy was at 62% for Outremont, so they had trouble maintaining possession and moving the ball. Forge was up around 83%. And it was a physical match. I mean, that's something Forge talked about all week as well, that they were going to come in and play physical. They're going to play hard. Tackles were hard. Fouls, what total was 35 fouls, and they were about even. Yellow cards, 6 in total. 4 of them went to Forge. So the intensity was there, and that was one of the keys to the match, was intensity. And it did show up for Forge, and it had to, because they had to match the other club. Up the tempo was one of the keys for Forge. Did they up the tempo? I think they tried. They got in behind the Outremont defenders quite a bit. Something was just a little off. The timing, those through balls just weren't really connecting. Outremont is a very aggressive goalkeeper who's very experienced. I think he's up around 37. So he's been in the, and he has some international caps for Haiti behind him. So they were playing an experienced goaltender and this was clearly a goalkeeper, and this was clearly a club that did their homework. They knew what Forge was going to come in and try to do. And we're going to hear from some of the members of Outremont. We're going to hear from coach Luke Brutus, and we're going to hear from defender Tarek Agday as well. Just hear from them and get their experience of playing against the CPL club in Hamilton. And of course, we'll hear from Forge FC head coach and technical director Bobby Smirniotis. And we'll also hear from Wubin Passius, one of the goal scorers for Forge in this match. And it's also his birthday. I came in as a sub and found the back of the net. And what a great way to spend your birthday. You get a goal, you get a win, and you get to slam the hammer down as the man of the match afterwards. Anyone who's been to a Forge home game can get that experience. So, all in all, Forge FC moves on to the quarterfinal of the Canadian Championship. They are going to play CF Montreal for Major League Soccer. Last year, these two clubs met, and Forge was just this close. They ended up losing in penalty kicks, but the memories of that match are still pretty fresh with a lot of Forge players, and a lot of members of the Forge club they came up through the CF Montreal system in Quebec. So they're very familiar with the club. They're familiar with soccer in the region. Few are familiar with Outremont. And so there's a lot of meaning behind this match against CF Montreal, which is going to go down in a couple of weeks. We're still waiting on official times now, but you can always check Forge FC website for the latest information. And we are joined by Benedict Rhodes of CanPL.ca. Benedict, thanks a lot for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, these matchups are tricky sometimes, and Forge has talked about it all week. When you're playing a club that there's just a lot of unknowns going into the match. I mean, you can study tape, but in this case, Outremont hasn't even started their season yet, so there's not a lot to go off of. And so, that can be a challenge, right? A team that's hungry and trying to prove something.
Yeah, absolutely. You said they haven't played it all this season yet, so I think their coach did it best after the game. They maybe don't have some links ready yet. Some of the players maybe aren't as familiar with each other as Forge's players have been for the past several years, of course, especially so far this season. And I think that did show us at some point during this game. Forge's familiarity, but yeah, definitely a factor in this game.
Yeah, and I just it is nice. You look at the respect between the clubs after the match, and you have Forge that they're playing, Quebec semi-pro team. Next, they're going to be playing an MLS team in CF Montreal. It all seems very good for Canadian soccer, and I feel like the players can feel it in just the mutual respect among everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've seen over the past few years with this competition and other competitions around the world, of course, that just because someone's an underdog, that doesn't matter, right? Like it depends on who shows up on the day. We've seen that in this competition with CPL teams beating the Whitecaps, or Forge bringing Montreal close last year, for example. And yeah, again, it just matters who shows up on the day itself. And there were some moments when Outremont did show some signs of promise, but Forge got the business done as they were expected to do.
I mean, what's it like being on the other side, on the Outremont side? You're the underdogs. You have to play a very disciplined style of match, and then that first goal goes in. I mean, do you stick with your game plan, or now do you have to start opening things up?
I think if you want to win the game, obviously you have to open up a little bit. But I think for the most part they did kind of stick to their game plan, and I think it's important, to know there wasn't really any pressure on Outremont in this game, right? Like it was Forge's game to lose to some extent, and I do think they looked confident at the start of the game. Outremont, they came out, they had a couple of good moments, and then as it opened up, Forge had more chances, and it maybe went a little bit more in their favor. But for the most part, I do think it was a pretty good performance from them. But again, Forge did what they had to do, and came away victorious.
Yeah, and Forge, they're going to be the underdogs in their, I guess, just the quarterfinals now of the Canadian Championship against Montreal. So they're going to kind of be in that position. The difference being, of course, is that Montreal's not going to be caught off guard because they know what happened last year. How much does that previous matchup play into this next one coming up?
I think it plays. It definitely plays a factor. I don't know if it's not going to be the priority for each team, of course, but it does go to show that Forge can go head to head with these teams. Forge also played pretty well down at the Azteca against a very good team from the Mexican League. So it definitely will be sort of a warning. I think last year's game to show that if a couple of chances had gone Forge's way, maybe it would have been a very different result, and that'll definitely be in the back of the Montreal mind, especially.
Can Forge play? They like to play that, especially in that final third. They like to get creative. They like to attack and bring bodies. Can they play that way as an underdog against Montreal?
Well, I think the thing with Forge is they're not going to see themselves as an underdog, even if they might be. I think Bobby Smirniotis is a coach, and Forge have some players who don't fear anybody, and I think they're going to come out. They're going to focus on playing their own way, and not focus on reacting to what Montreal is doing. And I think that'll be to their benefit. And I think they definitely can play the style they want to play and get forward and create chances and do what they always do, I guess.
Yeah, I guess we're a little over a month, maybe a month and a half into the CPL season, and it's been the season. It's been tough to really get a read on the clubs. I mean, there's been a lot of parity to start the season. It seems like anyone can beat anybody right now. Is that kind of just par for the course, and how things, early in the year, teams are still kind of trying to figure things out? Is there a point when we will probably start seeing some separation?
I think so. I think looking forward specifically, like the last couple of years, they've been in the same sort of situation. Maybe they didn't come out uh, looking like the champions, but then they recovered well and ended up sort of peaking towards the end of the season, which is when it matters, of course. So I think as we start to see more games being played and more teams getting these minutes under their belts, finding out their best formations and best players, I do think we'll see some trends, and I think Forge, as always, will be in the mix at the upper end of that scale.
All right, Benedict Rhodes from canpl.ca. Thanks so much for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
All right, let's recap some of these goals here, because it was two strikers for Forge, two guys that, you know, Taron Campbell was the first goal scorer in the 34th minute off a free header, and Campbell has scored some goals this year, but he's a guy Forge wants. They want him to keep going. They want him in a flow of scoring because he's a guy that can really catch fire. And he might be now. We might be in the midst of it now. Terran Campbell got Forge on the board, 34th minute. And then the birthday boy, Wubens Passius, it's the 92nd minute, I believe that was in. Another header. And Passius is a guy that Forge wants to get going as well. So, speaking of Passius, let's go to the birthday boy. Let's hear from him. Here's Wubens after the match.
Yeah, it's always nice, like you said, to score on your birthday. I think it's a nice birthday gift, great ball from David. So I'm really grateful for that goal. And like you said, we got the win and be able to slam the hammer. It's perfect.
Yeah, just you got some time at the end there, and also just watching from the bench. What were your thoughts on your opponent tonight? There was a lot of unknowns going into it. You knew they were going to be physical and hungry for a win and to prove something. Do you feel like you got a pretty tough challenge tonight from them?
Yeah, of course, it's difficult when you don't play with the same team that you used to play every weekend. But I think the coaching staff did a great job. During the week, we had a lot of video meetings where we were able to see what the opponent were able to do and where we could, attack and be the winner of this game. And I think we did a good job. So, but again, they did a good job, and that's it.
All right, that was Wubens Passius, the goal scorer, the birthday boy for Forge FC. Now let's hear from head coach and technical director with Forge, Bobby Smirniotis.
I think the tricky thing with these matches is you're expected to win. And if you lose, everyone will say the world's coming to an end. And it's so it's a little bit of a tricky one from that end. So you have to work with the psychology of the players to make sure they're prepared for that, because the team you play today is a champion. They're a champion of their league, so they know how to win. They know how to play in important matches. Yeah, they're not a CPL team. They're not a team in MLS, but they're a champion. So that's the tricky component to it. And coming into it, we expected a lot of what we saw. Obviously, we had a very good background report on the team with Coach Kit, who's works with us here, having been involved with the club for the past decade or so, and just knowing a lot more of the players, so it wasn't as much unknown to us. But the unknown was, there's not a lot of film, not a lot of games this year, so you had to predict what was going to happen. And I thought the guys overall to their best today did a good job with it.
Passius came on and scored, and it is his birthday, which I know didn't factor into any of your decision at all, but just not nice for him to get on the board, and also on a it is his birthday, so it's a little extra nice as well, I guess.
It's always good to score on your birthday. That's for sure. No, it's excellent for our strikers to score goals. Anytime you score a goal, that's rhythm. I was asked before about rhythm. Attackers, in the end of the day, are players of moments. We want them to do all of these things in the game: press, win the ball, do all of this. But in the end of the day, what matters is putting the ball in the net. And two of our strikers have put the ball in the net today. They've created some good, high-quality opportunities, and that's the most important thing, because there's nothing better than that feeling of the ball getting in the back of the net. And the more you do it, the more it happens in the future.
How did you feel about Welshman's game tonight?
Yeah, I thought it was good. It was exactly what we wanted from him, to be a little bit of a force and a physical force in his movement and his verticality and getting forward. I thought in the first half, especially in the first 30 minutes, he did a great job getting in behind them. It's a matter of then, is the pass a little bit too heavy? Is it a little bit too short? Or, did they get over? But he made some great runs, and those are some things we want to see from him. So it's great to have him out there and for him to start gaining his rhythm as well.
All right, Bobby Smirniotis, not a whole ton of time to think about this one because Forge is back in action on Saturday at home against Ottawa, 4 p.m. kickoff. Hey, before we sign off, let's hear from Outremont. It's an experience for them to play against Forge. Like I mentioned, here's a club who has yet to play a competitive match this season. Their season hasn't started yet. This is their first taste, and it was against a club at a higher level on the road. All those things go into it. It makes it, there's some respect. I mean, for Outremont, what they were able to come in and do, and they were at least in the match right up until that 92nd minute when Passius put it out of reach. So having said that, let's hear from Tarek Agday, defender with Outremont.
it was a game of different phases. So we came in the game with a specific plan. We didn't want to concede very early in the game. It happened in the first half, but I think we managed our way through the game. It's a different type of games that we have in championship, and to start that with the season with a team that has several games in their legs, we knew what to expect, but obviously we were proud to take as much experience as we could in this kind of games, and yeah, I mean it was a great test and a great way to start the season for us. We wish we could have a few games in championship before coming to this game, but I mean it's the way it is. But it was a great game from Forge, definitely.
Yeah, and those were sentiments that were also shared by Luc Brutus, the head coach for Outremont.
We saw it on the videos, different videos. We knew how they play. But when the reality comes up, sometimes we still make mistakes and still hesitation. The timing sometimes has to be perfect to be able to play very well on the 2v2s. And the timing was just a little bit off, giving them the time to turn and go forward. So we did a little bit of adjustment. We talked about it a little bit with the players, but they knew about it. So they just adjust a little bit better on the second half.
All right, Luc Brutus, head coach at Outremont. We also heard from Tarek Agde. Great experience for them, and a lot of respect for Outremont and what they were able to pull off. Now, Forge, moving on, I mean, that's the story here. To the quarterfinal, they will play CS Mont-Royal in a couple of weeks. So we're looking, I believe the windows between the 24th and 27th. Again, the official time will be released soon. Make sure you're locked on to Forge FC website and social media channels to get the official start time and the official date of that match against Montreal, because it's going to be a good one. But before we get there, we have domestic league action. And Forge FC will play Saturday, 4 o'clock, against Atletico Ottawa. Forge needing to bank some points because they only have one win this season. So it's a big match for them. And that is why some people were surprised that Bobby Smirniotis didn't go with maybe a younger group for this match and maybe keeping guys fresh for the weekend. But it goes to show you where Forge is right now. They want more out of their players. They want more as a whole out of their club. And when you're not, your game isn't quite where it is, you don't want to miss any opportunity to try and kind of get guys back on track here. So I think this match will serve them well going into the weekend against Ottawa. I'll be there. Tickets are still available. I hope to see you there.
We are the Forge, the mighty, mighty Forge.